Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Eye on the Industry podcast, where we explore conversations shaping the future of optometry and the leaders behind it. Today's episode is particularly special. We're going to talk about succession planning, overcoming tragedy, rebuilding your life at any age, and managing major life transitions while continuing to lead with strength.
We are honored to welcome Dr. Diana Monea to the show today. And I'm going to have to do a bit of reading on this one because Dr. Monea has an impressive resume. She is an optometrist, keynote speaker, and consultant with over 40 years of leadership in clinical practice and practice management. She founded and scaled 3 independent practices in Regina and Calgary and led teams over 40 staff and 5 associates as well, and successfully executed a structured succession plan in 2025. She holds a Master of Human Resource Management from University of Regina and is a fellow of the American Academy of Optometry. And she has served as a national speaker and key opinion leader for Alcon, Novartis, Esler, and Transitions. She is also the founder of Anna's Vision and the author of This Party Called Life and the Art of the Grift. Dr. Mania, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. And it's indeed a pleasure. And all I can say is, if I can give something back to my fellow colleagues or to anyone through a long journey of trials and tribulations, as Isabel says, I would be so happy to do that.
Well, we think that you give back in a lot of different ways, and the pleasure really is all ours. So again, welcome. And Dr. Manya, before we dive into the discussion around succession planning and leadership, we'd like to kick things off by asking you a question. And I'd like you to go back to the first day that you opened your very first optometric practice. And could you tell our listeners what would one piece of advice be that you would give your younger self?
Well, if I were starting all over again, I could go back in time. I would probably look at things a lot differently than I do today because experience teaches you a lot of things. But what I would say is that, you got to trust the journey and you've got to be patient. In the early days, there was uncertainty. Everything was a challenge. Every late night, every difficult patient, every financial uncertainty was a worry. But I had to remember, and I now know, that it was all worth it because I was building something for the future, building something that I hope would last the test of time. But I couldn't see it at that time. So probably the most important thing is don't rush. And every single obstacle that you have is a lesson to be learned.
Right. Beautiful.
That is very inspiring, Dr. Mania. You successfully executed your practice sale in 2025 after decades of ownership. When did you realize it was time to shift from building your practice to planning your succession?
Well, through a long, almost 50 years of building a practice and the sweat and labor that went into it, I realized that I was building something that perhaps was bigger than myself. And, a set of circumstances like the sudden death of my husband and so on, it really made me realize that without a long-term partnership, things were different. People were different. And it takes years to develop you know, that camaraderie that you have with someone else. And so I realized that in order for me to not just let everything decay and be destroyed by changes that occur in all of the industries that we have today, I realized that all the work and decade that I put into growth, I had to look at someone else and something else to continue on. And so that brought me to the point of leadership. When do you leave the ship? When do you no longer become the captain and plan for someone else to lead it? And with changes that are occurring today, it is time to move on. We've got challenges that we've never seen before, and I've been through many. That will be AI that is coming, and how will that change the industry as we know it today, not only in terms of ophthalmic appliances, but also in terms of medicine. So we're on a for a big change, and I believe that succession planning wasn't an optional thing, it was essential.
Right. Absolutely. And it's interesting because many practice owners delay succession planning because to them it feels overwhelming. There's an emotional side to it. What were the first concrete steps that you took to begin that process?
Well, when you go through the process of building a practice and you go through all the trials and tribulations, you never really think of the long term. But if I were to give someone advice now, I would say start a practice with succession in mind. Start a practice with the end of the journey in mind. Because if you don't, then you don't have clarity as to when it should begin.
Hmm.
Many of us and many of my colleagues waited until bad things happen, changes in your life, such as the death of a spouse, or health changes, or the economy being destroyed, where you didn't keep up with time and you don't have the energy and the vivacity to do it anymore,
Yeah.
or you don't want to spend the money that's involved. So I think it's really important all along to have a journey in mind as to when you're going to exit and what you're going to do about that. Now, of course, that's going to be subject to a lot of changes in life. I know that. But I
Yeah.
think clarity is probably the most important thing, to seek the advice of financial planners, advisors, legal experts, breaking it into small, tangible parts rather than looking at a whole picture and wondering, how do I process this? I
Hmm.
certainly know with myself and all the changes that have occurred, it's been really tough because there's so much to do. How
Yeah.
do I actually do this? So you've got to break into small parts day by day. It's like that in any journey. And so I think that you have to have clarity about what you're doing. You have to have a
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes things happen and we don't plan it, but if you plan ahead, at least you're a little better equipped to deal with some of these challenges that you face. So let's talk a little bit about some of these significant personal and professional challenges that you've dealt with throughout your career. If you can dig a little deeper or share a little bit more about how this adversity reshaped the way you show up as a leader.
I think adversity, although it's very, very tough to get through, actually
Mhm.
teaches you a lot about empathy for other people. And perhaps one thing that I still work on, patience. I learned that leadership isn't just about making decisions. It's about also holding a space for others and understanding their struggles. And then, and most importantly, leading with humanity. That every single person out there, no matter what they have, has got a part of them inside that maybe hurts, and that's why I love practicing because, the nice thing is that you see the soul if you take the time. And when
Mhm.
you do that, you make a difference in someone's life. So, my thing in terms of adversity and all these different things is, we all are going to go through rough times in our life. Are you there unconditionally for the person? And so sometimes that's the beauty of optometry. We can always be there to make the path and the sight of someone so much easier and better. And that's what gives me a great feeling of reward in this practice that I've dealt with for so many years, is that every one of us have the opportunity to change somebody's life. And we
Yeah.
always hope for the better. And I hope upon my last breath on this planet that I can say I made a difference in at least one person's life so that it was worth it to be here.
This is really beautiful. And you definitely are representing what love led leadership is, Dr. Monia. And, that leadership is really about serving others. And you've had an amazing journey. You returned to university and completed your Master of Human Resource Management in 2023, decades into your career. I would say that's very impressive. What inspired you to pursue that at that stage in your life?
Well, first of all, I didn't want to be left behind. And I wanted to see if my
Mhm.
brain was still working, that I can compete with younger generations. But I want to tell you that I don't believe that learning ever stops, no matter how old you are. So I think we still, even at the point I'm at now, with all the adversities that I've had and still deal with, I think it's time to grow. How can you move forward? And so the thing about taking the master's in human resource was that it seems that in businesses today, the most difficult and perhaps the most financially decaying thing is when you don't have the right people in the right place.
Mm.
That's number one where it starts. I don't care how much money or whatever you put into something. If you don't have the right people, you've got a problem. And that becomes more and more difficult with time. And things have changed. So I thought that, an old bag like myself, if I went with young kids and, much younger than myself in decades, and I can get along with them and understand what went through their mind, then life would be better. But what I learned was more important than anything. So forget about what I learned in the human resource department. I learned a few things that, you know what? I still can do it. And I also learned the most important thing, how all generations can work together. That the millennials have something to offer. The Generation X has something to offer. The baby boomer has something to offer. Even the Generation Z. If we all work together and use our talents, can you imagine what a wonderful world this would be?
Yes, I think we can all learn from each other, definitely. And we can especially learn from you, Dr. Monia. You balance ownership, advanced education, authorship, humanitarian work, and a major business transition. How did you manage multiple life changes at the same time without losing focus?
Well, you know what, Isabel, I would say that I would like to tell you that it was easy, but it's not. And even at this point, I mean, I just got a note from the insurance company that I have to go and check for this and this and this. Well, I never did this before. I left this up to Don, my husband, to do. But now I have to learn things that I don't really want to learn. But, you know, I think once again, it's baking it into small tasks that you could accomplish. And even when you figure out like where's the water meter, because I don't even look at that, discover where the water meter is and learn how to read it. Now, to a guy, that might seem really stupid, but to a woman who's never done this is something new. And so once I've challenged myself that I can do that, and then, as scary as it is, it just makes you feel that well, I can do that, so I can move on to the next step. And so I guess that's what I'm working on. But I think the most important thing is to prioritize tasks, one small task at a time, and learn that, and then move on to the other thing. Fear is a great motivator, and sometimes when you're left alone, I feel it sometimes like I've been now orphaned. And so now I have to find my way, and it's frustrating at times because now everything is burdened on me. And I feel mad, I feel guilty, I feel anxiety, I feel all of those things. But I realize if it's to be, it's got to be me. And I want to tell you the most important thing. When you feel orphaned, all you need are a few people there with you, unconditionally. And I have to tell you that it wasn't always who you thought it would be. And sometimes it's complete strangers who just want to help you. And it's amazing the people that I didn't even know were in my life that have come to help me. So, I just want to help others too because I realize that if I can get through this journey, all of us at some point are going to have to go through it. And I'm here. I'm here to help somebody.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you're so right. Sometimes the kindness of a total stranger can turn your day completely around. And it's interesting that you say that because I think the community around us, whether that's friends, colleagues, family members, it's the people at the end of the day that really make a difference. So thank you for sharing that because I completely agree with you. Um, we're going to move into rapid fire questions. And the first one I'd like to ask you is one word that defines leadership.
Courage.
Love this. Can you describe legacy, Dr. Monia, in one sentence?
Well, that's a tough one, Isabel, but I shall try. I believe that legacy is this. Legacy is like a ripple of trust, kindness, and vision that we leave behind to hopefully improve the lives for others.
Beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Well, Dr. Monia, we want to thank you for sharing your wisdom, your insights, your story. I think a lot of what you shared today is going to resonate with our listeners and the optical community. And to our listeners, if today's episode resonated with you, make sure that you're subscribing to the Eye on the Industry podcast so that you don't miss any future conversations.
Yes, and share this episode with a colleague who may be navigating through succession planning, rebuilding, or stepping into their next chapter.
And we also want to thank our media partner, Optique, for supporting this podcast and those meaningful conversations in eye care.
Yes, and thank you again, Dr. Monea, for the inspiration. And you are a true legend in the industry. And Christine and I admire you. And it was just an honor for us to have you on our podcast. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. And remember to keep your eye on the industry.
Take care,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the Eye on the Industry podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time, stay sharp, stay focused, and keep your eye on the industry. We'll see you next time.